and thanks for joining us and for making time to be with us, the members of the media. My name is Colin Msibi. You're quite aware that the advisor was straightforward. We want to deal with the issues of the taxes, which are the mayhem which is happening in Cape Town. And I think the minister has been to back-to-back meetings in Cape Town. So the minister will address the nation this morning in terms of the outcomes of those meetings that she attended. The minister is joined by the Director General, Advocate James Mlau, on the main table. So that would be the first part of this morning. As I said, the second part is, of course, the issue of the signing of the communiqué by the Excellencies, both Ministers of South Africa of Transport, Minister of Transport in South Africa and that of DRC. So that would be the second part. But we felt that this is quite a burning issue for the country. We will start with the issues of the taxes. So at this point, I'm going to request the Minister of Transport, Ms. Chikunga, to come and address the nation. Thank you. Minister.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Mr. Msibi, Consular General Membele, DG of the Department of Transport, Advocate Mlau, CEOs that have joined us here today, senior managers, the Chief of Staff, the advisor to the Minister, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. I just want to mention.
Our colleagues in the media are complaining they can't see you, so we are going to fix the microphones now.
Oh.
Yeah, you can just take it and then we'll... Oh, which one is it? This one. So we drop it. We drop all of them. So the minister is out here. You can see what? This is fine.
Thank you very much. I just want to state clearly that government is deeply concerned about the ongoing conflict involving the minibus taxi industry and the city of Cape Town and Cape Town, which has escalated into a strike as a result of the impounding of the taxi vehicles by the city of Cape Town. We condemn the violence that has characterized the strike in the strongest possible terms. Those who perpetuate criminality must face the full might of the law. Government will not tolerate lawlessness irrespective of who the perpetrator is. Our democracy is founded on human rights, and the exercise of those rights require that we respect the rights of others. It can never be acceptable for those who are aggrieved by the actions of the city to blockade roads and undermine the rights of ordinary citizens to travel or access schools, places of work, and economic activities. It is equally not acceptable for officers of the law to conduct themselves in the manner that violates the law and the rights of citizens, including the taxi industry. We will therefore act decisively, working closely with the law enforcement agencies and authorities to uproot this criminality. We call on the taxi industry leadership to denounce any form of violence or intimidation by its members. I have personally intervened in efforts to find a lasting solution to the impasse through numerous engagements with the taxi industry under the leadership of Santaco. I've also met with the Premier of the Western Cape, the MEC of Transport, and the city led by the mayor and the MEC responsible for transport in Cape Town. We've made strides in addressing the root causes of the current tensions, and we are confident that we will find each other in the process. The city of Cape Town introduced some years ago what we refer to as the conditions of operating licenses, which the taxi industry has expressed reservations on. The task team that was established to address the concerns has not made headways, resulting in the city implementing the impounding or continuing to implement the impounding of vehicles based on the conditions. It is an integral part of our legal system that administrative decisions must be based on the principle of legality. We have national laws in place that govern the infringements and penalties dealt with in the contested operating licenses conditions. The national laws are in place to ensure fair rules applicable to all citizens, irrespective of the city or province they reside in. This is a constitutional mandate to ensure order and effectiveness of the rule of law. It can never be that a city will define itself outside the parameters of the national laws and implement penalties that are out of sync with these laws. We therefore call on the City of Cape Town to respect and uphold national laws as they currently stand. To this end, we call on the city to return to the negotiating table to address the areas of disagreement and demonstrate a genuine effort to find a lasting resolution to the current challenges. On the basis of this consideration, we therefore call on the city to immediately release without any conditions all vehicles impounded based on the National Road Traffic Act and leave those that are impounded on the basis of the National Land Transport Act of 2009. We remain committed to moving with speed in finding an amicable solution that must enable the taxi industry to resume operation and call off the strike. Such an outcome is in the interest of the country and, of course, the industry. Our efforts to regulate the taxi industry must be underpinned by mutual respect of the law and a genuine effort to uplift this industry and ensure that it assumes its place in the broader public transport industry, characterized by respect for the law and the rights of others. Violence and lawlessness have no place in our society, and government will definitely not hesitate to unleash the full might of the law against those who believe they can perpetuate such conduct with impunity. I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks very much, Minister. At this point, we'll take questions from members of the media. We are here. We'll take 3 sets of 3 questions. By the raise of hands, when you ask your question, you must introduce yourself and the news service you represent. Yes, sir. You can go ahead.
Tabiso Goba from Eyewitness News. I have a couple of questions. I just want, the first one, I think it's clarity. The minister mentioned something about taxis being released on different acts. I don't know if she can just expand on those acts and why she's calling for those impounded taxis to be released based on those acts, just for further explanation. And then my second question is, the minister was obviously in Cape Town engaging with the political leadership of the Western Cape and Cape Town. I just want to know, how have those engagements been? We do know, obviously, this is obviously a political situation and a different party is there in Cape Town. So I just want to know, has the political leadership in Cape Town and the Western Cape been amenable to government intervention and stuff like that? And then just my last question is regarding, we do know that the previous Minister of Transport talked about formalizing the transport sector. I just want, the taxi industry, my apologies. I just want to know, in terms of that process of formalizing it, how far have we been, and what successes have there been, or what breakdowns have there been in that part of formalizing the taxi industry? Thank you.
Thanks for that. Can I have 2 more hands? We moved too quickly. Can I see 2 more hands? In the absence of the hands at the moment, Minister will allow you to respond. And of course, the Minister will delegate where she needs to.
Okay. Maybe the first question is on the 2 different legislations. We have the National Land Transport Act. The issue of impoundment of taxi or minibuses is actually found in that legislation. It is in Section 87 of the National Land Transport Act. And that act specifies as to when can you impound a minibus taxi. It actually is based on the operating licenses in the main. And those, therefore, are the conditions over which you can impound a minibus taxi. Then you have got another act, which is the National Road Transport Act. The National Road Transport Act, whatever infringement happens there that is in that act, it applies to all South Africans. It will talk to, for instance, drunken driving. What do we do if we found you driving and you are under the influence of alcohol? It sets in sanctions for that, and that applies to all of us. So it is already the issue, for instance, I'm making an example, the issue of drunken driving is already legislated and the sanctions are there. What is happening in the Western Cape? They then have decided to take such issues and put them under the operating licenses conditions as reasons for impounding a car. So they are actually overreaching and extending the legislation that already exists. They are adding a sanction that does not exist in the legislation. And that sanction is only meant for the taxi industry only. Now you can't do that because it would mean that we can extend any legislation. If we think that any legislation has weaknesses, you follow an amendment process that goes to Parliament. You don't use anything like your conditions in order to strengthen any weak, if it is weak, legislation. You amend the legislation. As a result, quite a number of taxis, up to 6,000, they are impounded on the basis of a wrong legislation, which does not actually give sanctions of impoundment. Reckless driving sounds very serious. Surely you would think that if it is reckless driving, you may impound a car. But in terms of the National Road Traffic Act, the sanction is imprisonment, it's fine, or both. It does not include impoundment. But the Western Cape have then added impoundment, which is not in the National Road Traffic Act, nor in the National Land Traffic Act. So you have got that. As a result, their vehicles are impounded every day. Impounded for changing a lane without indicating. This, of course, is wrong. It can never be undermined. However, in terms of the National Road Traffic Act, the sanction is not impoundment. So you don't know as to where they're getting that from. So they're actually impounding vehicles not in terms of the law. They have some regulations and laws that they are creating on things that they are already legislated. And you can't do that, because what it means, we can at any time decide to take away or to use whatever that we like, even on human rights. That is the problem that we have in the Western Cape. And if you look at the notices that they give you, if you like, it will be your ticket. They don't even specify as to why a car is impounded. They just say you have infringed the conditions of the operating license. And those conditions, they are more than 50. It can be a light, the brake light that is not working. It can be reckless driving. It can be the operating license that you don't have, which is, of course, is in terms of the National Land Transport Act. They don't specify. And people there, the taxi industry there, is made to pay these hefty sanctions and hefty amounts that they have set. If you look, they even report on the money that they are actually getting from the taxi industry, and they budget on that. It cannot be. The mayor, in fact, the MMC responsible for safety and security in the Western Cape, he says for one truck that is banned, we are going to impound 25 taxis. No, you can't say that. Wrong as it is to touch taxis, but you cannot therefore say randomly, because you are actually confirming the fact that it is alleged that he said that. You are actually confirming the fact that your impoundment is not informed by any law. You are just doing it. And this is what is frustrating the taxi industry there. We met with the city yesterday. I must commend the Premier of the Western Cape. I must also commend the MEC responsible for transport in the Western Cape, MEC Mackenzie. But the city is so arrogant. They decided that they're not going to participate in the negotiations. They decided that they have actually issued the conditions and they're not budging. And those conditions, they actually include these things that are not in the NLTA, but that are in the NRTA. And those, they do not, as a matter of fact, have a sanction of what is this, impounding the car. That is the problem that we have. However, late in the evening, somehow they indicated that they were going to subject these to their legal people. We already are doing it as the Department of Transport to subject this. We have advised the Western Cape province to say they must actually set aside these conditions so that it is only the national act that gets implemented and applied in the Western Cape, at least for now, so that the taxi industry can call off the strike. Because whatever the mayhem that is happening there, we believe that once the taxi industry goes back to operations, then of course the mayhem can actually be reduced. We are concerned about the number of people that are not able to go to work, the children that are, learners that are not able to go to school, and the frustration that is happening there. But we're also concerned about the picture that is created about us in the international arena, particularly because this actually happens at the time when we are hosting the Netball World Cup. So these are the issues. Those are the two legislations that are being, we believe, implemented and executed wrongly. There are conditions. They are there in the National Land Transport Act. Impound on those. The taxi industry was actually calling on me to declare a moratorium on the impoundment of cars, and I said I can't, because there is a legislation. I don't have powers to declare any moratorium on any legislation. So I can't do that. So the conditions that lead to empowerment in terms of the National Land Transport Act, they remain in force. But the conditions that are being added as sanctions that are not in the legislation in the Western Cape do not have any legal standing. They don't. They simply don't have any legal standing as far as we are concerned. And therefore, we're going back to the Western Cape this afternoon to actually check as to whether the city is willing or it continues to be adamant. If that is the case, then we'll have to see as to what we do at national level. We already have some plan B, but we'll definitely not at this moment tell you as to what that plan B is. But we are planning on the plan B because they said they are implementing our national legislations and they use them in these conditions. They actually refer to National Road Traffic Act, National Land Transport Act as conditions, yet they are referring to them wrongly. And we are saying it cannot be. These are national legislations. They apply as they are to all South Africans. If we were to impound cars for these things that are in those conditions, nobody will be on the road in South Africa. And it cannot be that we have some laws that only apply to the taxi industry with all its challenges, and those laws that apply to other South Africans. These conditions do not apply to the bus industry there, to the e-hailing industry there. They only apply to the minibus taxis. It cannot be. It simply cannot be. So that is why we are saying to that JP Smith, you are not the law. You are simply an MMC. And if everybody in the Western Cape is afraid of you, we're not afraid of him. He must apply the law as law. He's not a goddess of South Africa. If they are afraid of him, we will tell him what to get off and ensure that he applies the law as it is. He is not God. Everybody in the Western Cape, in the DA and so on, when he speaks, it's like it's God or Gabriel speaking. He's not Gabriel. He's not. He's not to come to earth and tell us about that Jesus is coming. No, thank you very much.
It was a mouthful. It was a mouthful. Can you take another second round of questions? We see there's one hand here. You can go ahead, sir.
Yes, sorry. It's Alex from News 24. So I just want to double check in terms of what you spoke about now with the legislation. So you're saying that the city of Cape Town effectively can't make bylaws, their own bylaws based on the different national legislations. Is that what you're saying? I just want to try and understand.
Okay. Any other question, Mobil? Any question? Did you want to respond, Minister? Did you?
No, I thought just click on the.
Okay, just wait. Did you? Can we take Mobile? Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to check because you're saying this is part of. Hi, Ngobile from Newsroom Africa. We just want to clarify because the minister's just explaining that these are things that are added to what was already there, which means they were not part of the legislature. So is this then illegal?
I'll try. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think the question is really aimed at whether we are saying the city can make bylaws. I think the minister is saying the city can, but in these particular instances, our sense as a department is that the city has gone beyond what the national legislation allows them to do. And she has actually made example. So if, for instance, in terms of the NLTA relevant sections, impoundment only arises if you're on a route that you're not allowed to be on, or you're driving an unroadworthy vehicle. But the city then creates additional, there's actually a set of additional conditions that have been published. And our sense is that those are outside of the law that exist. So that's really what the minister is saying. I hope I've covered both questions. Thanks.
They can make bylaws, and DGS is saying they can make bylaws, but those cannot be in conflict with the national legislation. As no national legislation can be in conflict with the Constitution. It's as simple as all that. No conflict. They can on the basis of the national legislation. Or if there is no legislation, then they can. However, they cannot have a bylaw that is in conflict with the national legislation, as the national legislation cannot, you cannot have it if it is in conflict with the Constitution. It works like that, sir. Thank you. I don't know whether you're saying adding something, but we didn't. I didn't understand the question.
No, I just wanted to ask with regards to what the city he was explaining.
Oh.
Does this mean that it's illegal what they have done because it's outside of the law?
What is not illegal is for the city to have bylaws. But those bylaws, when they are in conflict with the national legislation, then it's illegal. Like in this case, they can't impound a car for drunken driving. I'm making an example. And I'm actually referring to this because even in my mind, it sounds bad. However, in terms of the National Road Traffic Act, drunken driving, its sanction is imprisonment, fine, or both. It does not include impoundment. The Western Cape, on something that is already not Western Cape, as the city of Cape Town, on something that is already legislated and has the sanctions, it adds a sanction. that is not informed by any process, any legislative process. So it adds a sanction that is not in the National Land Transport Act, nor in the National Road Traffic Act. And that, if we were to allow something like that in South Africa, then we'd have chaos. Chaos would actually reign.
Okay. Thanks, Minister. And DG, do we have any other follow-ups? I see two hands. We're coming to quite close to wrapping up this part. Yes, sir. News 24, and then.
Alex Mitchell again, News 24. Given that, Minister, given that the department's obviously taken the stance that these bylaws are in contravention, should the department not then approach the courts for a resolve?
Thank you so much. Minister Pitso Malemane, Kaya News. Minister, are we still talking about taxi strike here, or have we gone beyond that? Thank you. Have we gone beyond the taxi strike, Minister? Because we're talking about laws here. Are we now heading to taxi war, or a fight between taxis and the city? Thank you.
Okay. Those are the two questions. Any other? I'm trying to say, yes, Patricia. Yes, if you can just
Good morning, Patricia Fasache from the SABC. Minister, what's the timeline that you're giving? Obviously, you're saying you'll be traveling to the city this afternoon. But in terms of the vehicles that must be released, when exactly are you instructing them to release them? Is it immediately, when, tomorrow, or so? What's the timeline that you're giving?
Maybe the first question is, why are we not considering approaching the court? It's an option that we have, but we're still giving the opportunity to negotiations. What is, of course, disturbing in this whole thing is that where we are negotiating, there is the province of the Western Cape, national, and of course, the Santaco. The people that are supposed to be there have decided that they're not going to participate. And that is the city, which is very key. So we sit there, we agree on something, but then the MEC still has to phone somebody somewhere. And that somebody who is not present where we are will then say whatever. Sometimes they issue statements that are conflicting with what we are doing or what we are negotiating about, making our negotiations very difficult. When we met with them yesterday, we requested that they give decisive and authoritative powers to whoever is being their chief negotiator. But they have not done so. So we have got that challenge. They've still got, and that is why it takes so long for us to caucus as government even and go back to Santaco with whatever position. Because whatever that we talk about, we write, then somebody must call somebody, and that somebody must call somebody, and then all, even if they agree, they still have to call their God, who is J.P. Smith, who then decide to rubbish everything. And therefore, we're back on square one. That is the challenge that we're having. And then, of course, what about, whether we're talking about the taxi strike or whatever, say the taxi strike emanates from the impoundment of their vehicles. 6,000 of them, they are impounded. They are not in operation. And why that impoundment? Is because the city is executing and implementing a wrong legislation. And that is why we are forced to talk about these two pieces of legislation. Which one gives powers to all of us, not only the city of Cape Town, to all of us even at national level, to impound a taxi vehicle. It is in the NLTA section 87. Can the National Road Traffic Act give powers? Minister Begitsele, they actually had a roadblock in Durban. He tells me that we stopped about 36 people that were driving under the influence of alcohol. They could not impound any because it is not in the Act. They can't apply and implement and execute something that is not in the Act. And that is why we are forced now to talk about the implication and the implementation and execution of the Act, because that is where the challenge is. Okay, I think I have these things I can actually show you. Any one of us here, if you were to be subjected to such conditions, you would not want to live, because you would know immediately that your car will be impounded. And they do this even... I just want to say again this, even with the first blockade of the roads, first time, I think it was on Thursday, they were negotiating, the city and whoever, or whether it was team that was negotiating. Somewhere the Santaco members called to say, but you are negotiating, but our cars are being impounded here. And that is when Santaco decided to leave the negotiations. When they left, the smith of them heard about it and intensified the impounding, literally saying, go and stand outside. They've got a name of it, but it would be an equivalent of a taxi rank. So they stood on the entrance and exit at the taxi rank. Those that were inside could not leave because they knew their vehicles would be impounded, and those that were outside could not come in because their vehicles would then be impounded. What then happened is that those that were outside then decided, out of frustration, of course, which is wrong, but then to obstruct the road, so as to draw attention to everybody that, but we have a situation here where we can't move, we can't transport our people, because our cars now are for sure going to be impounded, because nobody tells the MMC responsible for safety and security in the Western Cape. He is a god there. They all pray him.
Thanks, Minister. At this point, we're going to take questions online. There's a few questions there. Setu Hassan, if you can read those questions for us.
Yes, Minister, we have a WhatsApp group here with journalists who report on transport news. There are 3 questions, but I think the other 2 you've already responded. I will read the first one only. It's questions for the Minister. It's Sune Payne from Daily Maverick. The question starts, given the seriousness of the situation since last week, why did the Minister, who is the political head of transport nationally, leave and return to Johannesburg over the weekend? Does that not seem counterproductive to a highly stressed situation? The number 2 was, what is the Minister's view of what is stalling the talks? And 3 was, when is the Minister returning to Cape Town? But I think those 2 have been responded. Thank you, Minister.
Okay. Minister.
Maybe let me start with what I did. Arriving in Cape Town, remember the negotiations between Santaco, the city, and everybody had collapsed. I went to request and to plead with Santaco that they return to negotiations, which they agreed to. We attended a meeting with the city. I went to meet with the city, with the province, again, in the absence of Santaco. We discussed, disagreed, and agreed. And I've invited Santaco to come, and then we addressed them. There were issues that they were not in agreement with, but then there were those that they said they can take to their members. That was going to be on Saturday. And therefore, on Saturday, we had to wait for await the outcome of Santaco's negotiations with its members. I just want to emphasize the point that even now, I have the Minister of Transport from DRC, who I invited to come to South Africa, not anticipating that we're going to have this. And because of that, I then had to fly back, so that, of course, I'm able to take him through the program that we have with him. On Sunday, we got the information that indeed, in fact, later, that there are issues that the membership is raising of Santaco. And those that were sent to the department and myself. We responded as the department, particularly on the matters that touch the National Department of Transport, to say this is what we think should happen. And on Sunday, having forwarded that information, then of course the city and the province, they met. They were just on the edge of reaching an agreement. When again the MMC for Safety and Security, seemingly in camera, saw the securities that take care of the leadership of Santaco, and sent whoever, but the law enforcement, to go and search them. When that happened, then the negotiations collapsed. That is now on Sunday. When they were just about to sign, for that matter, maybe to sign things that are not even correct, but they were just about to sign off those. And then the negotiations collapsed. It therefore called on me again to leave the minister, who is still here in South Africa, in the morning yesterday, to go and join, in fact on Monday, to go and join the city and the negotiations. And that is why he is here. We met yesterday. We agreed that the city and the province are going to meet as cabinet, so I can't sit in their cabinet. And when that happened, then I said I could actually rush so that at least I'm able, together with the Minister of Transport from DRC, can sign off whatever that he is here for. And that is why I'm here. I am flying back to Cape Town again this afternoon, and I will remain in Cape Town until the solution is found. But this matter is in the hands of the city now than any one of us. If the city continues just to be arrogant, then we have a problem. We said to them, if we were to agree on these matters in terms of the law, the conditions of impoundment in terms of the law, and therefore release cars that are impounded on the basis of the wrong legislation, the strike will be called off. They're saying they're not budging, and they're not going to speak to, they call them tax. They're saying they're not going to to talk to tax. I don't see the taxi industry and those people as tax. They might have their own challenges and issues, but I see them as people that are in business, that are transporting our people. And where there's lawlessness, I believe that the law must take its course, whether it is the taxi industry and so on, their fathers and brothers and sisters to their families. And I don't think that any mayor has a right to call them tax.
Thanks, Minister. Okay, the DG wants to respond to one question on the impoundment. DG, just a brief.
No, it's not an impoundment. I thought there was a question asked about empowerment.
Impoundment.
But I don't see the colleague who asked it. I just wanted to indicate that the program for taxi empowerment is ongoing. You might recall that in 2020 there was a national taxi lekgotla, and it took a set of resolutions on what needs to happen in foregrounding or in implementing empowerment in the taxi industry. So there are a couple of elements. One was that we agreed, the industry in fact agreed, that we need to improve the regulatory framework. In other words, who can come on board, who's on which route, how do we take out those that are illegal? That was one. Secondly, how do we improve the labor relations arrangements? In other words, how do you ensure that the people who are employed work hours that are complied with our laws across the country, and that the businesses themselves of the respective taxi operators are in fact legal? And thirdly, probably the one of the key elements is professionalization, so that when you go to taxi rank or you are in any taxi, you are treated in compliance with our laws. So that work is happening, and in fact is going to lead us to where we can then have benefits that are drawing down from government in support of the taxi industry, irrespective of what association they belong to. So I just want to say it's ongoing work, but we're at that stage where we're cleaning up. I thought just that input must be heard. Thanks, Minister.
Minister, just last question from Kaya. You can go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much. Minister, what impact has this created for tomorrow? It's Women's Day tomorrow. What impact has this caused with regard to the preparation? Just a follow-up again, Minister, going to Cape Town today, back to the talks, what can we expect? What different approach can we expect from you? Thank you.
Yeah, indeed, it is unfortunate that, but I don't want to speak on issues that are for another minister. It is for the Minister of Arts and Culture, Sports and Recreation. But I don't think that the Women's Day celebration will still happen in the Western Cape or Cape Town. I don't think so. I think allegedly, I don't have any confirmation. It's actually been moved, so that is possible. But I'm subject to corrections. But for now, I don't think that it's going to continue in Cape Town. That's one. I'm going there to Cape Town first to hear about the outcome of the discussions between, in fact, of Cabinet of the Western Cape and the city, to hear as to what the outcomes of that are and what then they will have said to Santaco. And of course, if none of that gives us the results that we want, then we'll have to look for the options, other options that we have said they're already in our minds. Like I've said, we are already involving our legal minds on these matters to see as to what are the legal conditions and legal avenues that are there before us so that we can deal with this matter. The sooner the strike is ended, the better, so that people can return, and even the operators can start operating and be able to pay for the taxes at the end of the month, because they are owing those taxes. So yes, that is what we're thinking. We really would want to see this strike coming to an end. It has taken long, and the impact is negative. Remember, if it is true, there's already been a travel alert by UK. This is bad, not just for the Western Cape, not for the city of Cape Town, but for South Africa as such. And that is why, as National Department of Transport, we are not saying I'm Minister of the ANC and that is the province of DA. That can never count, not now. What is counting is that there is a problem in one part of South Africa, and we have got to be there to assist. And really, I think I must say again, I really want to thank the Premier of the Western Cape. He's under immense pressure, political pressure for that matter, and as well as MEC for Transport, Mackenzie. We've been working with him, and it's not for free, but we've been working with him. He's been there up to the last minute, and he keeps us informed about everything that is happening. So I really want to thank them for that, but I can't say that for the city. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, if there's any other question, that brings us to the end of the last segment. Any question, Ngobile? Are you looking at me for the question? Oh, okay. So that brings us to the end of this particular session, colleagues. I do want to interest you to the one-on-ones at the end of the second session. The second session, I'm assuming DG is not going to take us that long. It is the signing, so I would ask you to remain so that we can then get into the signing. So at this point, allow the minister to go back and to prepare themselves, and then they can come back again. It's going to be quick. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Minister and the DG.